CEMSE, no, I think that the 2026 budget, no, and entirely different from the 2025 budget. It's likely going to be built on because in my intro, most of the target is set for 2025, especially the short-term targets. I think that the back some of the medium target, and I have about 2026. Yes, maybe a long-term target, maybe the ASAP. The mechanism, we budget via general statements that which means government policy via the current year, no, and to me we be in progress, and our government policy we are target date. The target date is a very short time, especially as within the financial year and as a budget year now, a very short term, and there will be so as within 2 years. And also your long term. Okay, the 2025 budget it had about 21 items from short term, medium, and long term targets that I could say achieved. But because we are talking about the financial year 2025 now, I don't want to talk much about the medium and long term targets. They are buying cars or in 2025. So what you mean, I say we have knowledge about it in the media and everybody happened then. During 2025, first of all, a banker said, obey see an answer or the 400 communities, Rebecca, with the effort of self-help electrification project 4 and 5. 2025, you are Rebecca, 400 communities. As we speak, there's no much information. Say, I'm buying at the home and answer on fund home. Say, progress away. There's no much information with respect that in the media. To mean conclude, say, I'm buying at me achieve and now on achieve we. But because of the lack of information on this particular project, view they say, yeah, I'm buying and achieve with this particular target for the year 2025. We, if you are buying, say, 2025. We move 4 units of Ameri. Already, Kaya, previous government, and then move 6 units. Now, 6 units, you the coke mass, and my 150 megawatts. And by Suka said, 4 units now, we move the Akoka home. Now, my 100 megawatts. The 100 megawatts, no count in one. And now, 250. As of now, there's limited information on whether I move the Akoka. And there's a name for that particular community around the Ashanti region. What I say, a move there's limited information on that. They think that there's going to be a build up as a build on with respect to this particular target in the 2026 budget because government has not done that. We, if you are a bank, I said, ministry in 2025, on person power. 132 megawatts according to my plan. That's a T3. I think this particular target has to be achieved because there's no mention of it nowhere in any of the reports and the media items. This target has not been achieved, and I think that is likely going to reflect in the 2026 budget, which is going to be built on. We, if you are buying, I say, obey involve private sector participation in the distribution of electricity and the electricity distribution sector. And on our buying, I be big kakra. Be say what the committee, where the report about committee naturally the kind of private sector participation that we come. But some many say any laid down report and answer requirement in terms of engaging private sector within our distribution. No, the insurance finance and that procedure be procurement and start here. So what it means is that this one will also be carried into the 2026 budget. So it's a work in progress. It's likely going to reflect in the 2026 budget unless the policy way was a standard dream. So we conclude private sector participation here. It will reflect in the 2026 budget. Now, at the back one, by a year, what you may a year review of renegotiation of power purchase agreement PPAs with
IPPs.
I buy to with this particular target 2025. I buy a save about $300 million from this negotiation, and a static previous government and almost other two. But the truth of the matter is that I buy actually completed these negotiations and other negotiations here, and 300 million. So one of the targets I buy actually achieve it will be the period negotiation, and the Abaya actually into this particular target. So it may not come in the 2026 budget. Maybe the other renegotiations they are by letter or review. We if you are a bank has Obama 12,000 net metered solar PV system across homes, businesses, and public facilities. I think this target has not been achieved, and the target we are achieving here is likely going to reflect in the 2026 budget. The rest repeat our budget in the movie. A bank has 35 mini grids as part of the latest mile electrification air force and 1,450 solar home systems. And also, I buy achieve the measure class wide in one of these projects. So that's being achieved and is likely going to reflect in the 2026 budget. We in the free war, I buy 381 solar home system for public facilities in outbreak communities like Bono, East, Oti, Savannah. None of these projects have started. And also is likely going to appear in the 2026 budget. Abaya to be achieved. We in the free war, a bank has established renewable energy investment and green transition fund based on the Renewable Energy Act of 2011, which is Act 832. And also now Abaya achieved it because there's no anything like that fund being established here. So maybe in 2026, yeah, a better. It's been so by December, they established this particular fund. But as we speak, government has not achieved this particular target. So there's no such change. It's likely to reflect in the 2026 budget unless they are changing the policy with respect to this creation of SAR fund. I buy a case of develop a 5-year cycle strategic document for implementation of the energy transition framework. As we speak, the energy transition framework, new one mentioned and ready. We've seen synopsis of it being mentioned by the president and the energy ministry, but so called energy ministry website, energy commission website. There's no any document with respect to a new energy transition framework. We are still relying on the old transition framework. When so the achieve is still in progress, but it has not been achieved. So it's likely going to reflect in the 2026 budget. We ensure there are a lot of things in terms of petroleum upstream issues, PECAN and other things. And also, achieve. So I think we have a budget now. Apart from renegotiation, I achieve we are saving a lot of money. Most of the targets are established by the Ministry of Energy and Green Transition. Because we achieve 30%. So there are a lot of 70 or more percent are achieved in the energy sector. The only positive aspect of this is that the energy sector now are very stable because there's reliability in the supply of electricity. And power now is stable now in urban. The various targets are established here and I set him at home for 2025. But since they are in the budget, I will say, 2025 no class will be achieved. We have to track and know that you achieve. But if you achieve, then we need to build on it. If you achieve, so mine, I will say decide who didn't achieve. We did that allocation of resources has to be a secure was the eco, the Ministry of Finance, and hand you over. So the current 2026 budget, November reflections. So in 2025, we projected about 2 billion said the co-energy ministry for some of these activities. Whether it's the coho and I say all these things will come out. First scanning in Ankoa, is likely going to affect our ability to say and to me I implemented some of these projects. But I say scanning in Ankoa I didn't think I implemented it that it differ about it. So some of these things also come up in the 2026 budget. But the big thing most of the targets of the 2025 budget for the Ministry of Energy and Green Transition were not met. And I think that a review now, the ministry will review these targets and then bring them back for us in 2026.
In reviewing the target, then the question Dudu Onobebusan say the green transition energy ministry for a particular purpose so that we are able to transition from using fossil fuel to generate energy to renewable energy, given the performance. Say the Oscar say based on the promises and policy statements that were made during the presentation of the 2025 budget. Would you say Pepe say indeed we want to transition from fossil fuel based energy generation to a renewable energy?
I think that mostly as a country we believe in nomenclature. You believe in titles, but the actual work, yeah. And if you look at the 2025 budget, aside the transition fund, there were issues of petroleum downstream, electric charging points at some of the fuel stations and other fueling stations, and also trying to achieve because before this government came into office, there was fuel station, 37, one of the stations, not all electric charging points. So now you're doing because of the categorical capacity in the 2025 budget, to scale it up. But there are still there are still none of the outlets across the country the electric charging points. Within that particular framework, now 2025 budget also mentioned that the government was going to supply electric vehicles for the transport sector, because the transport sector has been known to be one of the major contributors of your emission in Ghana. About 35% of the energy emissions, from the transport sector. It's also known to be the fastest emitter of your GHG greenhouse gases.
Mm-hmm.
And now a buying policy in 2025 will be pulling out a lot of electric vehicles. As we speak, that policy at this point in time there were policy mentions that even the ministries will begin to use EVs,
mm-hmm.
but they will be into fruition. So it is just the name that people want to ascribe to certain portfolios, but in terms of effective implementation, maybe any implementation, and as a botaibi buying oil transiting from fossil fuel to green energy, and that's what we call the just transition. I don't see anything like that. We in the few years, I've seen the president start some solar project or Dawa, right? Which I think that which is likely going to be a medium term project. But we in the few how we electric vehicles are we electric charging points are we in the few buy a household. Now there are two clean cooking sources. Clean cooking fuels or clean energy for households.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Ghana offer clean energy and technologies for adoption. Offer your average around 43% based on the population housing census of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So, data there are regions in Ghana, even though your average over around 40%. There are regions in Ghana or more percentage penetration with respect to clean energy and technologies for cooking and adoption for cooking. 4%, maybe 10%. So within clean energy utilization, there's a huge inequality
mm-hmm.
between some regions and some regions. So how do we break this inequality has never been a conversation in government cycles.
But yet we keep on singing, say we should change our cooking energy over a period of time now. We've had conferences and we've had statements. Oh
yes, so that is even clean energy and technologies for cooking. Now we have clean fuels. Now clean fuels, the LPG and certain biomasses and other things are some of the clean fuels.
Yeah.
Now, Kroma no upa population housing census of 2021, LPG penetration is around 37%. LPG penetration around 37%. No, there are ranges in Ghana here that are still doing 4.2%. That are doing 4%, 4.3%. The population housing census there are only 3 regions in Ghana, and more percentage, I have more than average percentage of about 37%, because actual percentage is 36.9.
That's the national percentage in the 37. No?
The national average, is 37.
Okay.
But only 3 regions and about 37. No. 16 regions. We train for about 12 or so of 12 or 13 regions are less than the 37%.
That's the national average.
That's the national average. The saddest part is that there are about 8 regions that are less than the rural average of 14.8. So it shows LPG penetration is one of the worst in the country. And there are regions in Ghana here that are doing 4%, 4.2%, 4.3%. So, Okachemi say, energy ministry, or we call it energy and green transition. And still, you are not able to bridge this inequality gap with respect to access to clean energy, which is in the Sustainable Development Goal 7. Then I don't know the kind of transition you are talking about. Maybe the transition with respect to energy mix. And that is power generation.
Yeah.
As a household, would have zero. And there's no any policy framework. Actually, and say government is bent on promoting the utilization of clean energy at some of these rural districts or rural regions or underserved regions. Who share policy, Diana. People just do jamborees, say MPF, you are shaman. These are not the practical ways of bridging the inequality when it comes to LPG adoption. They are just showing off and wasting resources. Wasting. Now, even the concept of renewable energy within our energy mix, which is power generation, we established the Renewable Energy Act, and as I implemented the Renewable Energy Act in 2011, 832. In 2019, we developed our first Renewable Energy Master Plan, built on earlier master plans, with specific targets set by 2030. Within our energy mix, you 10% of your energy power sector, renewable energy. And within the 10%, near Minuka say it has been around 2.4%. I've seen some data indicating 4.4%. But still, from 2019, I started, I will say every year, young Bianca with respect to renewable energy, and only 700 megawatts. But near Minuka say the renewable energy within our energy mix, is still less than 300 megawatts.
That's after a decade of you designing the Renewable Energy Master Plan. No? Still,
yes. After a decade of passing the Renewable Energy Act in 2011, and no share started developing master plans. I think we developed one in 2015 before we came in 2019 or so. All these master plans targets me achieve here. Now, as I say, Mate, say within what we call the Ghana Energy Compact, the ministry say 2010, they make me achieve 10% within our energy mix, which is renewable. It's not true. We cannot achieve it. I've heard the president mention that by 2036, we are likely going to achieve 15%. I think I have overall called that one. Or say we are likely going to achieve 15% by 2036. Which year, so I'm saying by 2030 we are going to achieve 30%. This policy inconsistency, lack of clarity with respect to your information quite abonti, with respect to your energy mix, and quite problematic. And the lack of investment or the lack of criteria in terms of mobilizing resources to push for energy, renewable energy within our energy mix, and also problematic. The American say whether in power sector, whether in petroleum, whether in household using of renewable energy, the concept in the green energy ministry and green transition okay. It's just an like name nomenclature being the account, but practically say you be a boosting renewable energy penetration in the energy mix, whether at the household level or power sector. No, meaning I don't see much being done in that regard, and I think that as of mine, maybe the 2026 budget must address concrete ways you make me a boost to renewable energy at the household level and also at the power sector. The saddest part for me is that the Ghanaian LPG consumer has been paying for what we call cylinder circulation margin since April 2024 with no value for money. So say LPG consumption, meaning for the past year, Sika MPA AJ, Sika the Ministry of Energy AJ. Let's say Sika any value mawa rebeho. We've taken almost 400 million plus Ghana cedis from Ghanaians through the cylinder circulation margin. After LPG, why a day? But the rollout of the cylinder circulation margin is poorly and ineffectively done. So net penetration, even though you're starting in 2024, penetration you're starting in 2023, penetration of CRM within the LPG distribution is still less than 2% of LPG distributed across the country. But any LPG consumer pays for the cylinder circulation margin. So your policymakers, they are not ready to change anything.
Gas, Fatiko no kokoto gas. Yes, a particular margin no edaswa utia ediaka sikano utia diato gas no.
Yes. Until who say you are paying for double margin. Any LPG consumer, it for double margin because the LPG market ebejo margin. Now MP has additional margin. Or the cylinder circulation model. Forgetting say one auto LPG, one turn free bottling plant.
There
one exchange point. But you are paying for it. And how do we make clean energy or clean fuel accessible and affordable when government policy is to impose margins on this particular product?
Making the product expensive.
Meaning what can I say, so Minister of Green Energy, Minister of Energy and Green Transition, but practically, ya boost to green energy, and I say clean energy. Ewo your household, ewo your jumamu, ewo your power sector is zero. In the say the petroleum sector doesn't have what we call environmental social governance framework.
ASG.
So wants to do refining. Obe refining, obe emite or emitia. Then obe contribute to society. A bit mama yanya net zero. You need this.
There isn't any framework.
There's no framework. The petroleum downstream. You know motor fuel. Motor fuel, no, the transport sector is using the fuel. We use fuel, no. Sa petroleum downstream fuel or motor, no. It will strike out our emission. Now you're zero. There's no any economic, environmental, social governance within the petroleum downstream. Even the power sector, na bukwana yewo na ebinum eyusu liquid fuel, distillate oil, light crude oil, all the other fuels to generate power. No, they emit. Because over here emission levels the power sector also contributes to our emission levels within the energy emission of greenhouse gases. The power sector doesn't have any environmental social governance framework. So what the ministry na enye di na yasesa. Like in just name, we change names, We don't review our policies. We don't draft new documents. And once a year changing. And I think that if the Ministry of Energy and Green Transition is even listening, they need to give us newsletters on quarterly basis of the various projects on my year in terms of the green transition arena.
At least to a larger extent, to ensure that there is transparency and efficiency on their part. Ghana for and accountability, of course.
And accountability. Most of the ministries don't do it. Okay, you see, you have governance series. You have series. Governance series, I may not even be ready to watch a 3-page and after a 1-hour speech. What I want to get from you is that on quarterly basis, based on your budget, these are things you've achieved, which are documented, which are reported, so that I can just download and know that these are things you've done, not the governance series or whatever they call it.
Accountability series.
Accountability series. So our ministries, must be up and doing in terms of telling us. But if you tell me about the Ministry of Energy and Green Transition, so far I've not seen any transition framework from them. So far I've not seen concrete frameworks to develop environmental social governance within power sector, within petroleum sector, whether upstream or downstream. I've not even seen any policy bridging the inequality gap with respect to clean energy and technologies for cooking or clean fuel for household usage. Meaning, policy document they are building on the earlier documents that have failed, which is the previous government policy of the buyer. That is what they are building on. And I think most government appointees, the law for money overrides how we should solve problems. Because the solve problem, PSOs are there to contribute to the discourse and ensure that regions are LPG penetration 4%. We research we do research to address the reasons why LPG penetration in these regions are 4%. Right? That is it. NHL will say what will be solve problem. But it's as usual, and I think that it is going to be so for a longer time because Ghanaians ministries now are not ready to solve problems.